I study information, especially information access and misinformation and equity in information. So I'm really interested in who gets to decide what information is accessible by people in various communities. And then what people do with the information that they receive, how they respond to it, and how it sort of forms social groups and social movements and community. My research has helped to advance training for journalists in the state. I was part of a project studying the news ecosystem in Oklahoma 2 summers ago. Myself and Allison Shortle, a political scientist from OU. And that information that we gathered was then used for training for journalists around the state. The goal is to actually come up with practical applications of that research. So it's not just something that's published in a journal that no one reads, which unfortunately is often the case and has happened to some things I've done. But my goal is for it to get out there and to be helping to impact decisions so that more people have access to information. I recently published my first book, and my book is about how the internet and social media in particular have really changed some of the boundaries for identity and belonging in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And really in my book, that's a case study that I feel is more emblematic of just sort of broad social trends that have to do with how more bureaucratic and highly bounded organizations like churches, universities, other types of institutions, how they negotiate rules and expectations in a world where people have access to more information than they've ever had before. And I think that what my research contributes to that is some perspective on the history behind, media ownership and access and who's influencing those algorithms that are favoring certain kinds of content over others. I also love to work with students on research, and a lot of undergraduate students work with me in research labs on various projects. Right now I have a lot of students working with me, and I have a summer program with the Rural Renewal Institute. So it's kind of like these broad different areas that I'm interested in, and students can participate if they're interested in doing data collection or data analysis or background literature reviews. And that helps me advance my research by, having more eyes and ears and hands. But I think that's one of the best ways for students to really just sort of like jump in and learn about the information economy and the news ecosystem in Oklahoma. It's by getting out there and talking to people and finding out, what do you think news is and where do you get it? What are the problems you have accessing news that matters to you or that might help your community? Many fewer journalists reporting on what's happening in the state. And of course, rural areas are the first to suffer when that happens. They already typically have 1 or 2 papers that are local and often are weeklies and not daily papers. And then when that information access is cut off, word of mouth becomes the primary method of communication, which in some ways is really good in a small town. You can talk to people, everyone, but also can cause a lot of problems with accountability when it comes to governing and self-governance for the people living in these communities. Students can get involved in research. Students can get involved in creating information. We have in our department, we have the Ocali, which is a student newspaper. It's a great way for students to get involved in sharing information about communities. And the Ocali is interested in gathering information not just about the college campus, but also more broadly around the state and especially around Stillwater in the county. So that's a great way for students to just, whether they're interested in the more strategic aspects of communication or the journalism side of communication, doing some research related to information and media can be a great way to find out, what exactly it is that you want to do.